Hey, good morning, everyone. Josh is Severe Weather. Welcome to my channel and happy Monday morning to you. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but we are going to take a deep look here at the tropics over the next couple of weeks. That's what I'm going to focus my video on, not just in the Atlantic, but things really ramping up here in the Western Pacific with lots of folks being threatened by the threat for typhoons out there. So anyway, let me share my screen with you all and show you what we're going to be taking a peek at now. This invest that I've been tracking for several days was very close to depression strength towards Friday into early Saturday. The National Hurricane Center said it was likely to become a depression, and then the wheels fell off of it. And as soon as I put out my fifth video on it, it started to weaken and dry air got in there, and we didn't see the system ramp up the way that a lot of models were handling it and showing it happen. So welcome to the world of weather. Not everything goes your way or the way you expect it to, but nonetheless, it is going to impact the Windward Islands here towards Tuesday night and Wednesday. So if you're in those islands and you're watching, do prepare for tropical rains and some gusty winds, but we're not looking at likely an organized system. Now, conditions do start to become more favorable for more tropical development, and I've got my eyes on another wave near the Cape Verdes now, which in about a week from now has a better chance, in my opinion, of potentially developing into a depression or storm. The next name on the list is Emily, and model average, which again, this is off in the future, takes it towards the Bahamas, and the area in the red here, just keep an eye on right now. I'm not saying we're going to have a hurricane or anything like that, but keep an eye on things. Early August would be the time frame, Florida, Southeast, Bermuda even. And just a more favorable storm track to see something, if it does develop, become more of a potential threat. So that's what I'm watching. I'll also talk about Tropical Storm Dawn, which was briefly a hurricane. Now it's east of Newfoundland, moving into cooler waters and on the way out here. But Dawn, believe it or not, actually, I was going to show you the graphic here in a little bit. Let me go find that for you. Where are we at here? I'll come back to Dawn. How's that sound? Anyway, my methodology is we do have a Kelvin wave. You see this area brown here getting ready to come off of Africa. That leads to enhanced, it basically removes the Saharan dust layer and leaves us with enhanced lift for thunderstorm development. That's going to cross Western Africa here on Friday, it looks like, or Thursday into Friday. And behind it, I think we are going to see a better threat for something to develop as we start to mix out some of that dry air that's been hampering storms. Again, this is just a forecast. It can certainly change, but conditions look to be more favorable, more promising for development towards the end of July. Carl Schreck is a scientist here. Actually, no, Carl. He and my wife went to school. So he's doing a great job here with NC State's climatology department. Madden Julian oscillation. This will probably mean nothing to you guys, but this is circulation in the tropics and currently in a phase 5, heading into a phase 6. It is predicted at the end of the month, as that Kelvin wave pushes through, to go into phase 8 and 1. Those are more favorable phases to see lift in the Western Hemisphere and Africa, and potentially more landfalling storms when we get into the United States once we head into phase 1 and phase 2. So definitely the tables look like they're going to turn a little bit here. Lots of warm water. You can see the only spot that is below average is in the wake of Dawn last week. It's kind of like if somebody took a hot shower for 2 weeks, you'd be left with no hot water left. That's exactly what's going on here in the middle of the Atlantic. But surrounding that, very warm waters with respect to average. And in our main development region, we are running 1 to 2 degrees Celsius above the average. Typically, at the end of July, our waters are getting to be about as warm as they get. Maybe later August, early September's the peak. But we're already in that early September phase here with these temperatures, actually even a little bit warmer than that. And really no signs of that cooling anytime soon. The only areas that are a little cooler than average are around the equator on the Atlantic side and over the Caribbean. And that is very much what you would expect to see in El Nino. But southwestern Atlantic, Gulf of Mexico, everybody's running several degrees above average, which if something gets in here and we have favorable amounts of lift and moisture, then obviously that would be a sign of a concern that a system could develop pretty quickly based on that storm fuel. And definitely in El Nino as well, 0.875 degrees Celsius above the average. Now, the Western Pacific, which I am going to talk about in this video, is also running pretty darn warm, especially around Taiwan, around the Yellow Sea between Korea and Japan, and of course on the southern waters of Japan as well. And this typically is a hot spot this time of the year, but it's running above average as well. The only spots that are a little below average are where our typhoon that I'm going to talk about in a bit have passed. But again, taking a hot shower for a long time, that obviously is going to cool things down a little bit. Now, we don't see anything of any urgent concern. There's an upper level trough moving through Cuba, flaring up some storms over southern Caribbean and around Mexico. No development expected here. Pacific, pretty quiet. We have some flare ups, but a lot of wind shear. And then here's our disturbance that is going to be approaching the islands here late tomorrow into Wednesday. And right now, it looks like it's impressive, but you can see north and west of it, there is some wind shear and there's a lot of dry air. That's that really dark black. And as I zoom in, I'll be able to kind of show you more of that. You can see there's a bit of a trough here that's produced a little bit of westerly and southwesterly shear over the front of it. And then just a ton of dry air. See that black dry at all levels in the way of it. So it just doesn't have what it takes to get really going. There's still a small chance this becomes our next tropical depression, but the chances of it becoming a hurricane are zero. The chance of it becoming a tropical storm are still pretty low. But here's Barbados, here are the Windward Islands, here's Trinidad, here's Tobago. You're going to get that moisture here in the next couple of days. So do be on the lookout for that. And in the eastern Atlantic, we've got another flare up starting to get going. These are the Cape Verde Islands. This is Senegal, and we can see a wave getting going here. Going to take some time to develop, but the one thing you'll notice here is that the deep black, the area of dryness, while it is there, you can see the fact that we had this wave here starting to add more moisture into the intertropical convergence zone, into the monsoon trough. And added moisture certainly can help. So this first disturbance, 95L, is pretty much our sacrificial lamb for what could be 96L here in a few days, maybe later on in the week. If that disturbance holds together, and it looks like it really isn't, it's going to pass just south of Barbados here on Wednesday and then head into the southeastern Caribbean. I don't think it's going to survive when it gets farther west. Some of the tropical models assume that it might. They bend it back down into the southwest Caribbean with moisture heading into Central America, Colombia, and northern Venezuela, but no threat to the United States. I just don't see that happening. Intensity forecasts, again, most of our models keep this at below tropical storm strength. A couple show it trying to get there in 36 hours. I think that's kind of far-fetched at this point, but certainly something I'll watch for you. And then behind this disturbance here, which has a low end chance, we do have our next system to keep an eye on, passing south of the island of the Cabo Verde Islands here on Wednesday into Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. You can see as we get to about this time next week, about a 50-50 shot that this becomes a depression east of the Leeward Islands. And generally speaking, that rather than going into the Caribbean, will more than likely head just north of the islands here next Monday and Tuesday. And that puts it in a favorable spot. The European has a look of a recurve at this point, but not all the models agree on that, and they have things farther south and west. So that's next to watch here. Here's a look at the GFS from earlier today. You can see really nothing going here through Thursday and Friday, but as we get towards next Sunday, we do have potentially low pressure forming east of the Leeward Islands, and that would head across into the Cuba area, into the southeast Bahamas. This is Friday, August 4th, and the GFS, which again, I don't trust too much on the exact intensity or the exact track, but has it near Florida here the weekend after next, and then moving across the Gulf. That's a little bit crazy, but some of the runs before took it up to the east of Florida, which I think is probably more likely. This would probably not be an East Coast threat, but more of a Bermuda threat. And the run before it was very scary looking for the East Coast. You saw, I don't think this, well, I don't say I don't think, but August 4th has a threat coming up the East Coast, hitting North Carolina on August 5th and 6th, and then moving up the East Coast beyond that. So all of those options are on the table, but this is the GFS model, and we know that it can produce some very wild results. But the next run is starting to come in, and it's already getting going really strong here over the Leeward Islands, August 1st. I'll show you guys later on where it takes it. This, you know, if I look at this upper level pattern, I have to think East Coast, not Gulf of Mexico. But again, way too soon to even make that kind of call. That would be foolish and certainly not professional of me to try to make an exact call. I'm not going to make a hero call on this. I'm just going to say you need to be preparing because there certainly is that threat growing. Here's the European model, and you can see it's got it recurving. This is Bermuda, so it protects the East Coast, and that is certainly possible. The Icon model also has low pressure forming here and moving across the south central parts or the southern Atlantic here. This is Thursday, a weak system. This is next weekend, and this is next Monday, about a week from today. And it does show probably a depression, but maybe something that's starting to wrap up becoming a storm. But this probably favors an East Coast recurve as well. I say probably, but that certainly can change. Now, here's a look at our ensembles. This is the European, and you will see that here's our disturbance that we're watching. This one's falling apart. and nothing really going here through this is Friday, but then beyond Saturday and Sunday, we do have several solutions holding this together and beginning to intensify it. And overall, they take it off to the northwest towards Bermuda and then recurve, and no threat to the East Coast at this point through 10 days. GFS model, on the other hand, same difference. We see low pressure here moving across the southern Atlantic. Some solutions going through the islands into the Northeast Caribbean, others going just north of the islands, but it's already south and west of the European, which would be something in the US we need to be a little more concerned with. And obviously, as you would expect, there's a huge spread with some models going through the Bahamas, others going over Bermuda, and the average coming up towards the Carolinas here around the 5th and 6th of August, and maybe up the East Coast beyond that. So again, we've got a lot of time here on something that hasn't even formed yet, but all the models are jumping on top of it, which means we definitely have to be watching it. This is what's left of Tropical Storm Dawn, and you can see it's lost all of its central convection. It's on its last legs. And more than likely, it is going to be a remnant low here by this afternoon and evening. Here's the center of it. Looks pretty on satellite, but it's definitely weakened. It did become a hurricane, our first one, briefly Saturday night, and then hit the cooler water Sunday, began to weaken. Now it's moving over much cooler water here on Monday. And you can see the Hurricane Center says this is about the end of the chapter here that we're writing on Dawn. But the 5th longest lived cyclone for the month of July in Atlantic history, and it did all of it above 30 north here over the central Atlantic. Didn't become a hurricane till 40 north. So this is classic El Nino. Lots of fish storms that are strengthening because of the warm waters out there. No threat to land, but pretty impressive to see a storm that's been around for half the month of July. So it is on its way out. The remnants will be carried into the British Isles here in a few days. And here is our intensity forecast as well with Dawn. All right, so let's shift to the Western Pacific, and this is where I'm much more concerned. We have Typhoon Doksuri, Category 4, 135 mile per hour wind, pressure down to 940. You can see on the satellite a menacing storm system. Now, some changes in the track of this system. A few days ago, the track was right over Taiwan towards northeastern China. Now we've got a bigger threat evolving for the northeastern tip of Luzon, and still a threat for the southern portion of Taiwan. This looks like this system is going to continue to ramp up and intensify for the next day. And then as it starts interacting with the Philippines and loses a bit of the warm water, it should level off and start to weaken slowly. But it is a dangerous system. You can see here's the predicted track. This is the Philippines and this is Taiwan. And the worst of the weather is going to be on the northeast side of the track. So it may just clip Luzon here. And then, unfortunately, may affect these islands of the northern Philippines and then southwestern Taiwan more. Although at that point, it looks like it will start to weaken. Here's the official forecast. Should reach its peak intensity here tonight into tomorrow, and then start to weaken a little bit as it interacts with the Philippines. But if it goes east here, it may have enough to continue at this pace and eventually stop strengthening and then affect Taiwan. So we still, obviously in Taiwan, need to be watching this, especially the southern portion of the island. And then, of course, in China, we want to watch as well, because the remnants of this dying system will be coming in your direction and will bring some very heavy rain. You can see the ensembles, generally speaking, kind of all over the place, but the average takes it right through this chute here between the Philippines and Taiwan and then into China, weakening at that point. The European says more of a threat to the Philippines, less to Taiwan. And the HAFS model here, right at 940, takes it down to as low as 919, which would be a Category 5. So in about 24 hours, this could be a very intense super typhoon moving very close to the northeastern Philippines, then weakening to Category 4 Tuesday night, Wednesday. Of course, in the Pacific, this would be Wednesday evening, and then just brushing Taiwan and then hitting China as a Category 4 storm. So in this instance, the HAFS says it's going to go right in the chute here and not hit land until China, and that would be later on Thursday Pacific time. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the only typhoon on the map here. We've got another system of concern here and very disorganized, but you can see this is off to the south and east of the Philippine Sea, east of the far southern Philippines, but models are all saying this is going to strengthen pretty quickly and threaten Okinawa and maybe the southern tip of Japan and again, eastern China, but this would be farther north and east. There are some models that bend this back to the west towards Taiwan, others that take it towards Okinawa. I talked to my brother last night who lives in Seoul. He is traveling to Taiwan tomorrow and then Okinawa next week. I told him you're going to want to reconsider those travel plans or you may be trapped for a while. And of course, the younger siblings never listen to the older ones, but I'm going to continue to feed him this information, but this definitely has the look of what could be a big typhoon once again. The next name on the list would be Canoon. The Philippines would name it Falcon, which I like a lot better. I think Typhoon Falcon sounds military, but it sounds scary as well. And here's the GFS. Here is the first typhoon, Doksuri. Here's Falcon, so I'm going to call it. And you can see it's got to track farther east, but it is deepening quickly and heading towards Okinawa as a formidable Category 3 or 4 typhoon, and then heading towards Shanghai, China, which would be very bad. And then, oh, by the way, here's another system behind it, which may threaten Japan or Okinawa here around the 7th of August. So 3 big typhoons possible in the next 2 weeks as we look at a pretty much a record Western Pacific season, which is classic strong El Nino or moderate El Nino. Here's a look at the European. You can see going right between Philippines and Taiwan, hitting China as a Category 3. Here's our next typhoon developing later this week towards Saturday and Sunday, and then moving over Okinawa here next Tuesday, so about 9 days from now, and then hitting Shanghai in about 11 days, 10 to 11 days. And then here's the Icon model, German model, which takes our system basically skirts the western part of Taiwan and then hits China. Here's the next system behind it, which it has aimed at Okinawa here and deepening as we get towards next Monday. So about a week before it becomes a bigger system, but certainly a threat towards Taiwan, Okinawa, and China once again. All right, in the U.S., we're seeing a lot of heat continuing and building into the central part of the country, and eventually it will head into the Midwest. The worst of the heat in Arizona and California will start to break a bit. Still going to be hot, but less hotter than what you would expect. South Florida, South Texas, we're still boiling here with heat continuing here over the next week. And the upper level pattern, you can see monsoonal moisture is coming up and over the ridge here. We do have a complex that's moving through Nebraska. And I will show you from radar Omega, we do have a severe thunderstorm watch with some warnings here on the southeast side of Omaha, and that will head into northwestern Missouri, northeast Kansas, and far southwestern Iowa this morning. We could see some tennis ball sized hail, very heavy rainfall, lots of lightning, and some gusty winds as well. Speaking of lightning, I got woken up at 1:10 in the morning here in Raleigh. We had a storm which brought a lightning strike to my neighbors across the street. It was 0.08 miles from me, according to my Perry Weather app, and that was alarming. It was a massive strike, but fortunately hit across the street, maybe even between 2 neighborhoods, and I'm okay with that. Marginal risk this afternoon and tonight from Minnesota down to the Ohio Valley, as well as parts of the Northeast. We may see an upgrade to a slight risk. If that happens, I think it's in Missouri and Illinois. Tomorrow, we have a slight risk for the Dakotas. We have a moderate risk for the Mid-Atlantic region, general thunderstorm area outside of that. And then on Wednesday, slight risk for the lower Great Lakes, including Chicago, and 23 million Americans. And this could certainly grow depending on timing of this system. But looks like Wednesday, we're going to head into a more active pattern out ahead of our strengthening ridge of high pressure, which is going to bring the heat here later this week. You can see this is Wednesday and Thursday, so a lot of fuel for thunderstorms here. And then Friday and Saturday, much above average across the Great Lakes. The Northeast is getting hot for a few days, but we do see some cooler weather coming in for next week, while the South is going to be broiling anywhere from Colorado to North Carolina and the Gulf Coast states as we end July and begin August. But notice how, while it does get hot in the Northeast, we start cooling right back down for the beginning of August. So just a couple of hot days before we see that break. Here's the upper level pattern where we can see much above average heights, ridge building in this weekend into the Northeast. Then the next trough pushes down. And when you're looking at the tropics and you see a ridge like this, you see definitely something that could come underneath it towards the Bahamas or northeast of the Bahamas. But this trough may pull it away from the East Coast, or it may draw it up the East Coast. So again, we're talking 13, 14 days out. It's still a guessing game at this point, but we're watching the upper level pattern as there is an opening in the ridge here for something to maybe come up the East Coast, tropical. So keep an eye on that, but I appreciate y'all's time. I have to run. I got a lot going on this week. Please consider subscribing, and also you can become a member for just $9.99 a month. That will give you guys priority responses, more interaction with me and each other. And if you need some tailored forecasts, have questions about events or trips coming up, that is the way to go, because I'm going to have a tough time being able to respond to everyone who is commenting on the YouTube channel. But I thank you for your time, and I want to give all the glory to God, who's given me this gift to be a meteorologist for over 20 years now, to share effectively with you guys and to save lives. But also as a Christian man, I've been called to share the gospel, God's good news. That also is to save lives, really to save souls. But the Lord has blessed me in many ways, and I didn't want to end the video without giving him all the glory. Joshua 1:9, have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of good courage, be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed. For the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest. The Lord is with you everywhere you go, the Lord commanded Joshua. And this is the courage verse in the Bible, telling folks to be courageous. And it means a lot to me, because I think when people hear this and they see what Joshua did, and even people who aren't believers, you may not be a believer and you're still watching. This is not telling you to go out and become like a Marine SEAL, a Navy SEAL, or like a Marine ground ops, and to just be extremely bold. And I mean, there are people who do that. And my gosh, I really do pray for you folks, because you're in dangerous spots. But just being a courageous person, maybe it's doing the right thing. Maybe it's saying, I can't do this all myself, but Lord, you can give me the courage to do what I believe I can do with your help. Not trying to take on everything yourself, but leaning on God and leaning on what he can do for people. Because the Lord sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for us. And he asks us to be courageous in accepting that gift and sharing it with other folks. I know the word evangelism scares people off. It has the word evil in it, but also has the word angel in it. So, to me, being courageous may just be saying, hey, look, I went through this when I was your age, or it's okay, I'm here to encourage you. You don't have to be the strongest, most courageous person in the world, but it definitely would benefit you to have the courage to realize that you can't do it all, and to get rid of the ego, to shed that ego, and to give it all to God, give him all the glory, allow him to guide you the way that you are meant to be guided. And to me, that's all I really ask for myself. It's, Lord, I just want to get on YouTube and have a good video today, or give me the drive to just get up and have a successful day. Not, I'm going to go out and take over the world, because that's not happening. So I'm happy to pray for you if you are somebody who believes you can be given that courage, but maybe you're a little bit afraid of, being turned loose. Maybe you just need some encouragement. You're in a dark spot in your life, and that's quite okay. I was certainly there for a while as well. But just know that the Lord is there with you. He commanded Joshua to be courageous, but he is also commanding each one of us to be courageous. And that may just be making a very small change to what we're doing every day. Maybe it's getting in the gym, getting off the couch. Maybe it's getting into the word. Maybe it's reaching out to somebody who you love, who is in a destructive relationship. Whatever it is, the Lord commands us to be courageous. And I would love to pray for you if you're a person that really wants to take that next step. Have a wonderful Monday, y'all. Have a great day. We'll see you again in the morning. God bless.